Readings from the Gospel of John, chapter 11. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus.
Lord, he whom you love is ill.
But when Jesus heard it, he said,
This illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it.
Accordingly, though, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. After having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then, after this, he said to the disciples,
Let us go to Judea again.
When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus,
Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him.
Jesus said to her,
Your brother will rise again.
Martha said to him,
I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day.
Jesus said to her,
I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?
She said to him,
Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world.
When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately,
The teacher is here and is calling for you.
When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him,
Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.
When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said,
Where have you laid him?
They said to him,
Lord, come and see.
Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said,
See how we loved him.
but some of them said,
Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?
Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said,
Take away the stone.
Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him,
Lord, already there is a stench because he has been dead 4 days.
Jesus said to her,
Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?
So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked upward and said,
Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me.
When he had said this, he cried out with a loud voice,
Lazarus, come out.
The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them,
Unbind him and let him go.
Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Thanks be to God.
While preparing this week, I did find a beautiful painting with the title Lazarus Come Out. But because of copyright issues, we can't put the painting on the back of the screen. So instead I'm doing something much more boring. I'm going to give you some book covers to look at. Not necessarily because of the covers themselves, but because of the content that I will come back to. There is a sport among gay Christians, or perhaps it's only gay theologians, to search for gay characters in the Bible. So can we begin by trying and do that sport together? Can we make up of any gay people in the Bible? Sorry?
Yeah.
Okay. Ruth and Naomi, thank you.
Jonathan and David.
Yeah. The classic. Jonathan and David.
Can the vicar say Jesus? Because nobody knows.
Jesus and perhaps this couple, Jesus and Lazarus. But we'll come back to that. So David and Jonathan are indeed perhaps the most favourite gay couple in the Bible. Doesn't David say about his friends that your love to me was more extraordinary, surpassing the love of women? What more evidence do you need? Ruth and Naomi are often mentioned as a lesbian couple in the Bible. Their commitment to one another, captured in Ruth's statement, wherever you go, I will go. Your people shall be my people. Your God shall be my God. It reflects a deep emotional bond and a powerful example of same-sex intimacy and love. A pair that you haven't mentioned yet, but just put it on your radar, the Roman centurion and his servant, a slave. The slave was sick to the point of death. If it wasn't for love, why else would an army officer in the Roman Empire care so deeply about a slave that he desperately calls for Jesus to heal him? To be honest, I've always had some reservations about this sport among gay Christians, theologians, to be looking for these gay characters in the Bible. After all, it imposes a modern Western notion of gay identity onto a pre-modern ancient text, from a culture with a very different understanding of sexuality. But at the same time, I do understand this desire among queer Christians to find like-minded characters in the Bible. If for centuries you've been thrown that book at you to say that the way in which you love, the way in which you desire, the way in which you live your relationships are unbiblical, are against the will of God, then it is empowering to find something in that same book of your true self. So today, we turn our focus to the story of Lazarus and Jesus. Not to suggest that they were a gay couple, but to read this story through a queer lens. Perhaps they were a gay couple, I don't know. It is well possible that Lazarus was the beloved disciple, this mysterious disciple in the Gospel of John, that is mentioned throughout the book, but who is never named. Because isn't the deep intimacy and affection between these two men incredibly moving? 3 times in this story, the love that Jesus has for Lazarus is mentioned in a way that no other character in the New Testament is mentioned in relation to Jesus. And isn't Jesus' intervention, calling his beloved friend out of the tomb, or should I say the closet, back into fullness of life, a powerful example of life-affirming and liberating action? In our Lent series so far, we've been focusing on L words. The first one being, I'm testing your memory now, 4 weeks ago, the L of Los, that was Richard's sermon. Loneliness, that was Tim's sermon. Where's Tim now? That's good. Lament, that was last week, Ruth's sermon. And we shouldn't forget John's sermon about roaming. Loss, loneliness, longing, and lament. Each of these themes are actually reflected in our reading today. The experience of longing, as Martha and Maria do have faith, a desire for healing, the faith that Jesus can heal their brother when he falls sick. They even affirm their faith, although after some pressure, that Jesus might be able to intervene after Lazarus has died. The experience of loss, as Martha and Maria are devastated by the death of their dear brother. And as Jesus weeps when he learns about the death of his beloved friends. This is only one out of 2 instances in the Gospel that Jesus is said to be weeping. And don't forget the experience of profound loneliness as Lazarus is put in the grave, locked up in the dark, all alone, spending 4 very long and lonely days there. The experience of lament, as Martha and Maria seemingly accuse Jesus for his late appearance to the scene. Why did Jesus decide to stay away from the village for 2 days before finally deciding to visit Martha and Maria and share in the loss of their brother? They address him accusingly. If you had been here earlier, our brother would not have died. Clearly, our reading is a highly appropriate reading for Lent, as it intimately captures these universal human experiences of loss and loneliness, of longing and lament, about all the misery that life can throw at us. But it is also a story of love and light in times of darkness and despair. An Easter story of resurrection that reinforces faith in Jesus' power over death. Many of us may be very familiar with this story. Its different movements, the illness, the delay of Jesus, the grief, the tomb, the command, the unbinding. But today I invite you to read this story through a queer lens, through the experience of those of us who have been told to stay in the shadow, to stay in the tomb, to remain hidden, to keep our truth wrapped up tight. When Jesus arrives in Bethany, Lazarus has already been sealed in the tomb for 4 days. And in the ancient world, that number 4 signals finality, a situation beyond hope. Many queer people know that experience intimately. The sense that the world has already decided who you are, what your life can be, not can be, and whether your story is worth telling or needs silencing. Has anyone watched the drama series from Channel 4, It's a Sin, which was screened a couple of years ago? Several more it had. The good news that came out this week is that the series is going to be developed into a drama play, so soon we will be able to watch it in the theaters. So It's a Sin is a beautiful drama series set in the late 1980s in London during the peak of the HIV pandemic. One of the characters, Richie, contracts HIV and develops AIDS. In the final stage of his life, his parents take him back to the town in the rural countryside, where he dies in shame, far away from his queer friends who had become his chosen family. Richie was put in a tomb of social isolation even before he had died. And this experience is not restricted to the period of AIDS decades ago. Queer youth in the UK continue to face a persistent undercurrent of homophobia and transphobia that shapes their daily lives. Bullying in schools, rejection at home, discrimination in healthcare and community spaces continue to be everyday experiences. And these external pressures often lead to an internalized stigma, leaving them to believe that they must suppress or apologize for who they are. Being placed in a metaphorical tomb by family expectations, by church doctrines, by laws, by social silence, it may be something familiar for quite a few of us. And some of us have placed ourselves in a tomb, in a quest for safety, because the world out there feels too dangerous. In this story, Jesus does something astonishing. He walks straight towards the place that everyone avoids. The grave, surrounded by that smell. It reflects a familiar pattern in the Gospel where Jesus consistently shows up in the places where society hides what it fears. He goes to the margins, the shadows, the closets of this world. And he doesn't go in there to condemn, but to call for life. Before Jesus performs any miracles, he weeps. He doesn't rush in to fix the situation. He doesn't offer a theological explanation, saying, this is part of God's plan. He doesn't tell Martha and Maria to calm down or to have more faith. No, he weeps. For those of us who have been told that God is a distant or disapproving entity high in heaven, Jesus' tears are a revelation. They show us a God who feels the weight of our grief, who stands with us in our pain, who refuses to look away from our suffering. Jesus' tears are a sign of love and solidarity. When Jesus cries out, Lazarus, come out, many queer Christians hear an echo of their own story. Not because this text is about sexuality or gender, but because it speaks about the universal experience of being called into authenticity, to our true selves. Come out is an invitation to step into truth about who we truly are. A step into community. A step into a new life. Lazarus does not emerge out of the tomb unpolished or perfect. He comes out still wrapped in the grave cloth, still bound, still carrying the marks of where he has been. Coming out, be it as LGBTQ+, or simply as our true selves, as many of us struggle with other categories of experiences of marginalization and stigma. Coming out is not a single moment. It is a process, a journey, a gradual unwrapping. The 3 book covers here are from a large pile of books that I've got at home that contain the life stories of LGBTQ people from all over the African continent. This one, She Called Me Woman, Nigeria's Queer Women Speak. This collection, Blessed Body, The Secret Lives of Nigerian Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual and Transgender People. And this one from Kenya, Stories of Our Lives, which is a collection of life stories of Kenyan LGBTQ folk. And when you read those stories, you discover that they are not simply coming out stories. They are not simply stories of celebration. They are stories of a journey, of a gradual discovery of the self, a gradual acceptance of the self, a gradual gaining of the courage to let your voice be heard. And those of us who have gone through this process ourselves often carry the scars of homo and transphobia and other forms of stigma on our bodies and our souls. We are wounded, traumatized people, even if we masquerade it with gay glitter and glamour, which we like to do. There is something very powerful at the end of this story, where Jesus says, unbind him and let him go. And I think this is where a queer reading becomes really powerful and meaningful. Because Jesus calls Lazarus to come out, but the community is called to unbind him. That means to liberate him for all the shackles that have tied him, that have restricted him. It is the role of the church to participate in the unbinding of those who God has called to life. Removing the shame that others have wrapped around them. Dismantling theologies that suffocate their breath. Challenging laws and systems that bury people. Creating spaces where authenticity is celebrated instead of feared. Unbinding is holy work, is queer work, is liberation work. And I don't need to tell anyone here today how prophetic this story is, as it stands in sharp contrast with the reality of the church, which in so many cases has wrapped us in cloths that restrict us, and which until today refuses to bless queer folks because of who we are and how we love. The Lazarus story is about what happens when love confronts the forces that try to keep people from living their full self. It is a story that calls us to live fully in the present, that invites us to be resurrection people, because we refuse to let death have the final word. It is a story that calls us, each of us, to be queer people, because we dare to imagine a world where love is not constrained by fear. It calls us to be unbinding people, because God is still calling people out of their truths, and they need communities ready to help them walk into the light. And because yesterday was National Poetry Day, thanks Paul for reminding us, I'm going to share my favorite poem, to end this sermon. It is a poem from Maya Angelou, I Will Rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trot me in the very dirge, but still, like dust, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise, I rise, I rise.